Good evening and welcome to the Route 11 Reinventing Metro Community Meeting. Before we get started with tonight's meeting, let's have a few words from Metro's CEO and General Manager, Daryl Haley. Thank you, Daryl. Now let's have a few notes before we get started. We will be recording tonight's presentation and streaming it on Facebook Live. Immediately following the presentation, we will have some time for Q&A. If you have a question related to the presentation that you would like to have answered live, please type it in the Q&A box, not in the chat box. Otherwise, you're welcome to submit your questions and comments by email at reinventingmetro@go-metro.com for a direct response. Also, we invite you to connect with Metro on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, to stay up to date on all the Metro's news and latest developments. And following tonight's meeting, all registered participants will receive an email with a link to a survey, including instructions on how to redeem your free day pass as our thank you for your participation. Also, everyone who completes a survey will be put into a drawing for a 30-day rolling pass. And finally, during this evening's presentation, we will have a series of poll questions that we would like you to answer. This will give us the opportunity to gather important feedback as we go. So let's ask the first few questions now. Which statement best describes how often you use Metro? Daily, 5 or more times per week, frequently, 3 or more times per week, occasionally, 1 to 2 times per week, I used to ride, but I don't ride anymore, or I do not use Metro. Okay, it looks like the number one answer is a tie between occasionally and I used to ride, but I don't ride anymore, both coming in at 29%. But we also have people who ride daily 5 or more times per week at 21%. Okay, now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters. Tonight we have Khalid Shamut, who is our Vice President of Strategic Planning and Development, and his team. Khalid, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, David, and good evening. Is it possible to turn my video on, please? David?
we'll get that done in just a second, Khaled.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'm joined with Mark Sam'an, our service planner three, works in the same department, strategic planning and development. And again, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us and this exciting um, project that everybody has been anticipating for so long. And it is really the result of the passage of issue 7 back in May. And we certainly appreciate everybody's involvement and their support of that initiative, which will benefit the entire community of Hamilton County and probably beyond as well. So again, welcome and thank you for being here. I'd like to start just, initially to talk about reinventing Metro Plan. I'm sure you have been, hearing about a lot about that for the past probably at least couple of years. But just to put things in perspective, reinventing Metro is really about driving the economic development in Hamilton County. Reinventing Metro is about improving the mobility for all in Hamilton County as well as beyond Hamilton County. Reinventing Metro is about attracting new businesses and employers to Hamilton County. We think that we will have a central role in making our area very attractive to businesses and employers to want to relocate to our area. Reinventing Metro is about providing access to more and higher paying jobs. Reinventing Metro is about improving the local and regional quality of life as well. So in a nutshell, really, Reinventing Metro is about the expanding regional connectivity, improving the economy, the local economy, attracting new businesses, and so on. Next slide, please. Obviously, to do all of that and to achieve these goals, there are certain things that we need to do to our transit system. We know that it needs quite a bit of improvements. It's not enough for our, the current demand as well as the near future demand. So certain things need to be done, and such as improving frequency. Many of our routes run at 30-minute, 40-minute, or even worse. So that's one of the targets that we need to attack and improve in our system. By providing better frequencies, buses would come faster and people would have to wait less and would get to their destinations in a faster way. We need also to provide amenities. We understand many of our bus stops do not have shelters, benches, and so on. So that's another goal that we need to work on. And we need to provide more better environments for our waiting customers. We also need to improve the span of service. Most of our routes right now run from around 5:30 a.m. till around 10, 11 p.m., which is really not enough. And actually, some routes don't even run on weekends. And if they do, it's a much shorter service on the weekends. And definitely that's not enough. People don't work from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday anymore. We have people who work second shift, third shift, weekends. People also, we want people to use transit for their weekend trips and visits and so on. So we definitely understand that we have to improve the span of service on all of our routes. And definitely we need to improve travel times. Right now, most trips will take an hour, hour and a half to complete when they shouldn't really, because many routes, they have to go all the way to downtown and then people will transfer and then only to go back north to get to their destination. That's not efficient. That's not, good travel time. So we need to improve that so people can get to their destinations in a much faster way. So all of these elements, the frequency, the amenities, the span, the travel time, and so on, all of these elements we need to satisfy so we can have a much better transit system here in Hamilton County. And that, by doing that, it'll make our region more attractive for businesses to relocate. It'll make the quality of life much better. It'll improve the local economies. It will provide access to better, more jobs, and so on. Next slide, please. And to put that in perspective, by once we implement Reinventing Metro, 20,000 more jobs will be accessible by Metro that are not right now. And these 20,000 jobs will account for about $850 million in total wages. So by improving our network, people can access 20,000 jobs uh, by using the bus system. Next slide, please. At the same time, I'm kind of jumping the gun here for a second. Um, we're also introducing few routes that will run 24 hours. By doing that, 343,000 jobs that are existing right now, 343,000 jobs will have 24-hour transit service. And that's really a staggering number. And many of these jobs are at warehouses, industries, manufacturing, and so on, that heavily rely on second shift and third shift employees. Next slide, please. I think I covered many of these points here, but I'd like to highlight just a couple. Um, so in addition to improving the level of service, things that we talked about like frequency, travel time, span of service, and amenities, there are other things that we're also going to provide as part of the Reinventing Metro project, such as adding more transit centers. Just recently, a couple months ago, we completed the Northside Transit Center. That provides a much better waiting environment for our customers. It's a much safer place for connecting. People don't have to cross streets to get to their connecting bus. They're waiting in a safe, big, nice, clean transit center. So we'll be adding more of these transit centers where needed across the county. We're working on a couple of those, like at Walnut Hills, Uptown, North College Hill, and others that will pop up as well. At the same time, we're equipping our fleets, our buses, with Wi-Fi, as well as charging ports, because we think that people could use their time in a more productive way while they're riding the bus. Currently, about half of our buses have Wi-Fi and charging ports. And our plan is by the end of this year that all buses will have Wi-Fi and charging ports. The next couple points we have a couple other slides that will cover those. But in addition to and I'll talk about this in more detail in the next couple of slides. But in addition to improving the service on the what we call the fixed route, or these 40-foot buses, we're also introducing a couple new modes of transportation that would serve certain areas better than these, the fixed route, such as using the demand response service as well as the BRT, or bus rapid transit. Next slide, please. So with regards to the demand service, or on-demand type of transit service, it focuses on a particular neighborhood, a smaller area, maybe 3, 4, 5 square mile area, where the big buses, like the ones you see on the streets right now, where it doesn't really make sense to have these buses serve certain neighborhoods, because either the demand isn't great enough to justify having a fixed route going there, or in some cases, it's just, the nature of the streets are too tight for these big buses. But there are other solutions, such as what you see on the screen. And the on-demand comes with different flavors. Like the one on the left-hand side, it's a point deviation flex route, or flexible route, where you have an established route with bus stops as well, using smaller vehicles. And the nice thing about this type of service is people can call at least an hour or two ahead and request that the bus deviates of route and pick them up from their door. Of course, there are constraints, so the bus cannot deviate more than 3/4 mile of a mile from the route, and then it picks that individual up and then continues back on route without missing a stop. And this has been implemented in many cities with great success. The other flavor of on-demand is what we call like anchored ride, that we have smaller vehicles. Again, it could be like the paratransit vehicles type vehicles or minivans or sedans in certain cases. Obviously, all vehicles have to be ADA compliant. And again, they're operating within a certain geographical area, a neighborhood, and it picks individuals up from their homes, workplace, and so on. But it takes them to a localized, a centralized location, such as the transit center or the mall, and other certain locations as well. The other flavor on the right-hand side is the dynamic flex, where the service picks up an individual from any location and drops them off at any location within the neighborhood. It's more like an Uber kind, or taxi service and so on, but it's a public transit service. So each of these have been implemented and different cities across the country with great success. And not all we cannot apply or implement one of these solutions to all neighborhoods, because we have to study each neighborhood and understand the uniqueness of the needs within that particular neighborhood. And that's why these come with different flavors. So one of these may be applicable in a certain neighborhood, when another flavor is applicable to another neighborhood. But we will be conducting a study, an in-depth study for this type of service this year. And our goal is by early next year to have at least one or two of these services implemented in Hamilton County. Next slide, please. The other new type of service that we will be introducing to our customers is the bus rapid transit, or BRT. And there are buses, obviously, they're running on a certain route with stations. What's unique about BRT is they're usually running on corridors where we have very high ridership, very high demand for transit. And to make it efficient, we separate these buses from the traffic. So as you can see in this picture, right in the middle of that roadway, there's kind of like a short concrete barrier that's physically separating the buses from the traffic. So, there's no conflict between the two. And hence, buses will be traveling at much higher speed to get from one station to the other. Stations are usually placed, about 3/4 to one mile apart, with, typical service connecting, all of those neighborhoods. And the stations will be designed, specific to that particular location, as you will see in the next slide. But this is a BRT system that we are very proud of, that we'll be implementing probably in the next few years here in Hamilton County. Next slide, please. So on the BRT, we have 4 corridors that we're considering, and we'll implement the BRT on 2 of these 4. We're considering the Glenway Avenue, Hamilton Avenue, Montgomery Road, and Reading Road. We will be doing an in-depth study and analysis, probably starting sometime next year, and then we'll do the design. And obviously, there's going to be some construction effort, because the separation between the buses and the vehicles, and then the stations, these are not shelters. I mean, this is stations, big stations, relatively speaking, that would need to be designed and constructed. Some intersections will also see, a need for improvements to accommodate the BRT. And the stations, they're not all the same. they, again, they may come in 2 or 3 different sizes depending on the location. There's usually what we call the neighborhood station, which is the typical standard station for the BRT of certain dimensions, size, and so on. But then there are other stations where we expect to have way more people waiting there or getting off. So those will be, bigger with, more amenities to accommodate the waiting passengers at those locations. And then at the end of the lines, probably, right next to the park and ride stations, those would have maybe a different design elements to them to accommodate that particular locations. So there will be at least 2, maybe 3 different types of stations for the BRT system. And so before we get to the next slide, because that's going to start a new segment. So this is really, in a nutshell, what Reinventing Metro is about. It is really the critical thing for us in terms of Reinventing Metro. The goals are to improve the local economy. The Reinventing Metro will improve the quality of life. It's going to attract more businesses and provide better access to jobs, and so on, and then provide that regional connectivity. And as I said earlier, in order to achieve these goals, we have to provide a better transit system by making it faster, providing better frequency, amenities, and running, at longer hours of the day, and providing weekend service. So this is really what our goals are and how we're going to achieve those. David?
Thank you very much, Khaled. I believe it is time to take another poll question or two. So if we could have those put up on the screen, we'll get right to it. All right, now we're asking everybody, how do you currently use transit? And you can choose more than one option if you use transit for more than one reason. The choices are commuting to and from work, shopping, medical appointments, school or job training, or socializing, or the ever popular more than one. Okay, let's see how we did. Well, it looks like we have a 3-way tie here. Commuting to and from work, which I'm sure would be even higher amount if it wasn't a worldwide pandemic right now. Shopping and medical appointments, all are coming in at 53%. School, very low, but again, that's probably related to COVID. And socializing is the number 1 at 71%. So that's very surprising right now, but I'm glad to see that people are being able to connect. And more than one has 18%. I believe we have another question. Which of the following improvements would most benefit you? And again, this is a multiple choice question, so you can choose more than one answer. Increased frequency or routes running more often, increased span of service, routes running earlier or later in the day, decreased travel times, meaning routes get you to your destination faster, or access to new places. Okay, well, it looks like there's a clear winner here, and that is increased frequency. 94% of those responding would like that, followed by access to new places at 65% and decreased travel times coming in at 3rd. Thank you very much for participating in these polls. Now, we're going to switch over to our Planner 3, Mark Saman, who's going to talk a little bit now in more detail about the actual year 1 improvements on the Route 11 and also overall.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start my video here if it can be allowed, but I'm Mark Saman. I'm the Service Planner 3 for Cincinnati Metro. Hello, good evening. In year one, which is 2021, this year, we'll have a variety of improvements for our bus network, namely that 6 of our routes, our 6 heaviest routes that are used the most and run the most frequently, will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And those 6 routes run on from west to east, Glenway Avenue, Route 33, Hamilton and Clifton Avenues, Route 17, Vine Street and Paddock, Route 78, Reading Road, Route 43, Gilbert and Montgomery, Route 4, and Madison Road, Route 11. Those 6 will run 24 hours a day. 3 other routes will receive improvements in year one, and those are Routes 16 and 20, which serve the Winton Road and Spring Grove Avenue and Central Parkway corridors. Those routes will begin running on Sundays, which they currently do not, and they will run more frequently during the weekdays. Route 46 will trade a branch with Route 43 and have some varying frequencies next year. On the next slide, we'll talk specifically about Route 11, which serves these neighborhoods, the east side. So Route 11 starts downtown. It leaves downtown on 7th Street, runs up Gilbert Avenue, and then runs through Walnut Hills to Woodburn, turns onto Madison Road, and then runs to Hyde Park, where it branches into 2 separate branches. One runs on Madison Road and takes half the trips. The other runs on Erie, Marburg, and Brotherton, taking the other half of the trips. And those 2 routes both end in Madisonville on Kenwood Road. So in this first year, the only change to this route is that it will begin running 24 hours a day, specifically the Madison Road branch, which is the one that runs on Madison from Madisonville all the way to downtown without leaving the road until it gets to Walnut Hills. So in that first year, the frequencies will not change. So the schedule in terms of during the day, evening, on weekends, how often it comes, but those will come in future years down the line as we expand the fleet and roll out some more changes. So this route serves all of these east side neighborhoods: Walnut Hills, Evanston, O'Brienville, Hyde Park, Oakley, Madisonville, as well as the Rookwood Plaza area of Norwood. So this is a very heavily traveled road. I grew up in this side of town in Hyde Park, Mount Lookout area, and these improvements will help connect everyone on the east side and to the east side neighborhoods, as well as take them downtown. So yeah, in that first year, those are the improvements you will see on Route 11. There are other routes that will see improvements throughout this year as well. As I mentioned before, we have those maps and stuff on this slide in case anybody wanted to take a closer look. But if you wanted to learn more in depth about those routes, we do have other meetings for those routes. So Route 4, which is the one on Montgomery Road, 16, 17, 20, serving the northwest part of the county, 33 serving the west side of the city of Cincinnati, Westwood through the Price Hills. Route 43 serving Reading Road, as well as Winton Hills. Route 46, which will take a branch of Route 43 and also serves Winton Hills, but also serves different parts of Uptown. And Route 78, which is the Vine Street, Springfield Pike, Paddock corridor. So that's all the improvements for year one along Route 11 and all these other routes as well. And I'll give it back to Khalid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So just to summarize what you just heard from Mark, the Reinventing Metro is really a multi-year plan with many more improvements to come across the network, in addition to adding additional routes in a couple of years or so, as well as the other services that I talked about, like the on-demand service, BRT, and so on. Obviously, we cannot do all of that in one shot, in one phase, and hence, it's phased into 4 or 5 phases. And what you just heard from Mark is what's going to be implemented in phase 1, which is literally around the corner. So by very beginning of June, technically end of May, these changes will be in place. Dave?
All right. Thank you very much, Khaled. Thank you very much, Khaled and Mark. That is very exciting to see what changes are coming for this year and also for the future years. All right, we're in the home stretch. We've got a couple more polling questions for you, and then we'll go to your questions. After these improvements, will you use the Route 11 more? That should say Route 11 right there, but.
Oh.
So it looks like that these improvements will actually result in more people using the bus to get around. So that's a good thing to see. 69% answered yes to that question. Now let's have our final poll question. If you said no to that previous question, please select one of the following reasons. And these are multiple choice again, so you can choose more than one. It does not run during the day or the time when I need it. My destination is not near a metro line. The bus does not come often enough for me to catch. I'd have one of the above problems if on the bus that I needed to transfer to, or some other reason. Okay, well, it looks like some other reason is the reason that maybe people won't be riding that route more frequently. That was 57% of those who answered no. The other number is 29% for the bus does not come often enough. That is an improvement that, as you heard Khaled and Mark both say, we're going to be improving with Reinventing Metro. We will be actually increasing the frequency. So that should help change those answers in the future. I'd like to thank you for taking those polls and for listening to our presentation thus far. But now it's time for you to take the floor. I'd like to open it up for questions and comments about our presentation tonight. So remember, ask questions in the Q&A box. Do not use the chat feature. They will not show up for everyone. You can always send emails with further questions or comments to reinventingmetro@go-metro.com. We also invite you to follow us on social media at Cincinnati Metro to find out all the latest developments. And as I mentioned, after tonight's meeting, we will send you an email with a link to a survey with additional questions and instructions on how to get your free day pass. And we will also put everyone who enters into a survey into a drawing for a free 30-day rolling pass. So now let's get to your questions. First, we have a question from Bob Herring. He asks, stations on Montgomery Road corridor?
I really like your attention to details, Bob. If you want to go back to that slide, Dave, that shows the BRT stations. Okay, yes, thank you. Yes, so Bob did notice that the Montgomery one doesn't have any stations. Good catch. This was kind of like a demonstration slide that we've used at other presentations, just to show the different types of stations and so on. But definitely, if the Montgomery Road corridor is selected for BRT, it will certainly have stations along that corridor. Thank you.
And Bob is focusing on this map, and very well that he does. He asks another question: the green and red lines, what are they for?
Yes, as I said, I mean, this slide was used for some, in another presentation. The green and red lines, actually, these are the rail right of way that we own. And they just happen to be on the same map here.
Bob also asks if we can increase the size of the slide, as he couldn't read the notes or the route changes. I would invite you to go to our website where you can look at those in more detail. He also points out that it's very important that the arrival time at the Oakley Transit Center for the Route 11 coincide with the arrival of the Route 4 bus. So how do you answer that, Khaled or Mark?
Yeah, very, very good question. And indeed, that is an important question as well. And I have my staff on the call, actually, Mark as well as others. And at least a couple of them are in the scheduling department. So they take note of this question and make sure that all of these are addressed, because you are absolutely right, and something that we need to provide. And thank you for the question, Bob.
Now, Jeff Wallace asked, is restoring weekend service on Route 28 part of the current planning?
Mark, do you want to answer that?
Yes, yes, it is. Not in phase one, but it is in a future phase, Saturday and Sunday service.
Thank you, Mark and Jeff. Joe asked, when will we see buses that run on natural gas or all electric?
Yeah, great question, Joe. I don't know when, I can't give you a specific date, but what I can tell you is we are extremely interested in pursuing green, fuel and green buses. And as a matter of fact, a year ago, we did go after grant money to acquire electric buses. Unfortunately, we were not selected for that. However, we're continuing that. It is part of our strategic goal to have electric buses, and we are diligently working at that. Just to give you an example, when we built the Northside Transit Center, which we just opened a couple of months ago, even though we don't have any electric buses right now, we did make sure to run conduits to 4 of these shelters, so that when we have electric buses, it'll be a very easy thing to install the chargers at the bus shelters, so that when buses come and stop for 10, 15 minutes, they're charged, with these quick type of technologies. So we have the infrastructure in place. So once we acquire electric buses, it'd be very easy for us to install the equipment without having to bust, all that concrete out and so on. Additionally, in the park and ride at Northside, working with Electrada, a local company, we installed 2 electric vehicle chargers. So you can park there, charge your car, and then take the bus. So we are very much into that, and we are pursuing these kind of technologies.
Thank you. These are some great questions. I'm really glad to see this interaction. We have another one from Carrie Devery, who wants to know, are there any bus stop improvements planned for the future?
Yes. Again, fantastic question. Yeah, indeed. One of our projects that we're working on with my staff and other departments is really to do an overhaul of our bus stops. We are currently in the inventory stage, which is going to take probably 6 to 8 months to complete, at least just that portion of it, because we have about 3,600 stops. But part of that project is, which we're calling the bus stop enhancement project, is to make improvements, not only to the signage, the posts, but also to the curb cuts, improve the sidewalks where needed, make sure that every bus stop has a landing pad, and so on. In addition to that, just last year, we signed a contract with a vendor to provide, and I'll let Matt, if he can answer that. I forgot the number of shelters that they'll be installing, as well as benches. Um, we have certain guidelines, and so we install shelters and benches based on a minimum number of passengers using that particular stop. So we have these guidelines, and we have to abide by them. Obviously, we would like to have more and more shelters and benches in place. But I'm not sure if Matt can speak. And do you know the number of benches and shelters that the vendor will be providing?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yeah, we actually have a vendor, as Khaled said, we're planning on installing in the next 5 years 400 benches and 200 shelters over the next 5 years. So we just started that project. It takes a little while with all the permits and processes involved, but they should be rolling out here very shortly.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, gentlemen. Bob Herring noticed those red and green lines on the map, and he has a question now. Any plans for those rail lines?
Not currently. We will be looking at how to best use or utilize these right-of-ways. Currently, for the most part, they're being used by the rail companies and so on. But we are looking into what we can do with them, how to best use them, and hopefully sometime this year we'll have an answer to that.
Moving on, Joe Grow wants to know if the Route 12X will see increased frequency at some point. Much of the feedback that he gets from residents point out the limited number of runs as the reason why they don't use Metro.
I will defer to Mark on that one, or Matt.
Yeah. Yes. So Route 12X will run more often, and the headways will be more even. So like when it says every 20 or every 15 or every 30 minutes, it actually means that. And that route also calls for it to be merged with Route 25X, and that will also add a lot of frequency because we have more buses running on that combined route.
Kim wants to know, will there be a hiring increase?
Indeed, yes, because as we roll out more and more service, we're going to require more and more, buses, vehicles to run these additional services, and with that comes, additional hiring for drivers and mechanics, which is, a great thing for the local economy as well. And that's again one of the other benefits for the local economy is many individuals look for SORTA as a great place to be at and work at.
An anonymous attendee wants to know, what about holiday schedules? Are they also disappearing?
Matt, do you want to answer that?
As of right now, no, they are not disappearing. Certainly, we are, as part of the overall plan, service on weekends, which is holidays generally run a Sunday schedule, will be increasing. So you should see more service on the holidays as we roll out this plan. But they are not disappearing, I promise.
Thank you, Mark. Barbara Wolf wants to know or mentions that she often sees people who have gotten on the wrong 11 going outbound and wants to know, would it be possible to renumber them 11A and 11B?
Great question, Barbara. And we understand that this is a confusing thing for our passengers. So since Mark is working on that, I'm going to ask him to answer it. And maybe Mark is not with us for some reason. Anyway, so one of the projects that Mark is working on is really renumbering of the network. Because to your point, Barbara, currently we have all of these different branches and they're confusing. So part of the Reinventing Metro is we try to streamline some of that and get rid of some of these branches and make it, easier to navigate the system. But at the same time, even the numbering system in some cases is confusing. And that's one of the things that Mark is working on, is so that, we'll have a new structure for our routes and the numbers. I can't tell you exactly when that's going to be rolled out. Highly unlikely it's going to be this year. I'm hoping that sometime early next year that we'll be able to do that, just because of the logistics of it. I mean, there's so much involved in making these changes. But that's definitely something we realize that it is an issue and we need to solve it. And we certainly working on that.
Anonymous attendee mentions that there is a lot of concern about new apartments and large developments in multiple East Side neighborhoods and the traffic that may result. How does Metro plan to market to residents of these developments, and what can be done to make Metro more competitive and reliable if traffic does increase along the 11 corridor without BRT in the next 5 or so years?
Dave, you want to take that?
I'll take the marketing part of it. We actually are very actively involved in creating a marketing plan right now to let the affected neighborhoods for these improvements, make them aware of it. We're going to use multiple ways throughout the media, social media, paid media, news releases, working with local communities. We'll actually go out and visit, once it's safe to meet in person, we'll go out and visit those communities and put posters up and work with local businesses and local apartments and other developments so that their residents and their clients and their customers know about the Metro service. I think that the improvements in Metro service that we've just talked about will make Metro more attractive and more competitive to driving, because even if a bus is in the same traffic that a car is in, you can do so much more to be productive while you're riding the bus. And as a bus rider myself, that is one of the main reasons that I enjoy riding the bus. Also, as more and more people choose Metro as their commuting option, it will actually reduce traffic of single occupant vehicles. So I think that those things will all go hand in hand, and hopefully they will bring about the resulting improvements, not only in people being able to get around, but also the traffic and the environment that comes with transit use. Do you have anything to add to that, Khalid?
No, I think that was perfect.
All right. CM Rosen gives a little shout out to Mark. Welcome back to Oakley, Mark. And she or he really likes the Route 11 improvements. The question is, Oakley has been promised more connectivity between MBDs, circular routes, going back before the Oakley Transit Center. The public transit needs from previous polls show a desire of socializing use. Thoughts about how we can keep making the community needs relevant. And they also like Joe's question, curious also about natural gas or electric vehicles for the fleet.
Mark, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. My apologies. I had an internet hiccup when you called on me earlier.
All right, no problem.
So not in phase 1, but in future years of the plan, we'll be implementing things like these sort of neighborhood level circulator routes, as well as things like more crosstown routes that don't go downtown, and different ways to circulate throughout. Sort of, you'll take a 40-foot bus is appropriate to take across town. There's going to be a lot of people who will be going to downtown or to uptown or to different job centers. And for these sort of neighborhood circulator routes, these would be routes that would run probably a smaller bus if it needs to, unless the demand is very high. And the idea is that we would be connecting all of these nodes. So we have, think of the neighborhood business districts and institutions as nodes we want to serve. The main routes usually go by them, but not all the main routes. And so we would be setting up to better serve that kind of travel, going from square to square, or going from shopping center to the residential areas, or vice versa. So we'll be looking at different communities all over Hamilton County to determine where we would put circulators. And obviously Metro has had conversations with many neighborhoods about having circulators in the past, and they've all been noted. and will be discussed. And yeah, we'll go from there.
And if I could just add to that, I think the fact that we're actually making 6 routes 24 hours will improve social use of the bus as well. As a transit user myself, that's probably the one thing that I've noticed as a deterrent to using the bus for socializing, is that you have to make sure you can still get a bus home after you're done. And CM Rosen would also like to point out that they'd like to know what the timetable would be for a study like that, and also that Oakley was one of the first to request this type of service.
Yeah, actually we're literally working on the scope of work for that project, and we anticipate to engage probably the consultants sometime by no later than April, and by fall of this year we should have the study completed, and then by early next year, as I said earlier, to have at least one or more of these on-demand services implemented.
Are there any more questions from the group? Well, those are certainly some good questions, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to give us such good, thoughtful consideration to those questions. I would like to tell you that we have stayed within our 1-hour time frame, so we've been very respectful of everyone's time. And as I advance the slides to our final concluding slides, I want to once again thank everyone for taking part in this community meeting tonight virtually. I want to reiterate that you can send emails with questions and comments that maybe didn't come up tonight or that you didn't think of to reinventingmetro@go-metro.com. I invite you to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Cincinnati Metro to keep up to date on all the latest developments. And I also want to remind everyone that after tonight's meeting, we will send you an email with a link to a survey. It has some additional questions that we'd really appreciate it if you could take the time. It takes about 4 minutes to complete, so it's not too long of a survey. And it also will include instructions on how to get your free day pass. I will tell you that if you do complete that survey and give us your name and a contact information, we will put you into a drawing for a free 30-day rolling pass. So we'll increase your chances to ride Metro. So once again, thank you very much for attending tonight's virtual meeting, and we look forward to many more of these as we roll out the Reinventing Metro plan. 2021 is going to be an exciting year as we transform transit in Hamilton County. Thank you.
Thank you all.